Good evening, everyone. We begin the readout tonight with the people of New York versus Donald Trump. Today was an historic day in Lower Manhattan as America learned the full extent of the allegations against the former president. And we got a look at criminal defendant Trump in photos that will live in infamy. The first American president to be charged with a crime, defendant Donald J. Trump, is seen here surrounded by his legal team, a photo Trump most certainly did not want you to see. It's nothing short of a remarkable image of the new reality for the man who raged in all caps on social media ahead of his day in court before surrendering for arrest and processing in Manhattan criminal court. Trump was uncharacteristically grim and silent while entering the courtroom, ignoring questions from reporters before pleading not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. The now unsealed indictment lays out the 34 counts in the form of numerous entries made with, quote, intent to defraud and intent to commit another crime and aid and conceal the commission thereof. The indictment isn't explicit about those other crimes that Trump tried to conceal, but it is laid out clearly in the prosecutor's statement of facts as a scheme involving Trump and America Media Incorporated CEO David Pecker, noting that in June 2015, defendant Trump announced his candidacy for president, and soon after, in August 2015, met with lawyer A, Michael Cohen, and Pecker at Trump Tower. At that meeting, Pecker agreed to help with the defendant's campaign, saying that he would act as the eyes and ears of the campaign by looking out for negative stories about the defendant and alerting lawyer A, Cohen, before the stories were published. The AMI CEO also agreed to publish negative stories about the defendant's competitors for the election. The broader scheme played out in three parts. First, a payoff to a Trump Tower doorman, alleging in November 2015, the AMI CEO learned that a former Trump Tower doorman was trying to sell information regarding a child that the defendant had allegedly fathered out of wedlock. At the CEO's direction, AMI negotiated and signed an agreement to pay the doorman $30,000 to acquire exclusive rights to the story. The second part, suppressing woman one, presumably Playboy playmate Karen McDougal. Quote, the defendant, the AMI CEO and lawyer A, had a series of discussions about who should pay off woman one to secure her silence. AMI ultimately paid $150,000 to woman one in exchange for her agreement not to speak out about the alleged sexual relationship. Prosecutors say, quote, the defendant did not want this information to become public because he was concerned about the effect it could have on his candidacy. In other words, it was clearly intended to influence the 2016 election. Then there's the third part, the hush money payment to buy Stormy Daniels' silence after the release of the Access Hollywood tape in October 2016. Quote, with pressure mounting and the election approaching, the defendant agreed to the payoff and directed Cohen to proceed. Cohen discussed the deal with the defendant and Trump Organization CFO Allen Weisselberg. The defendant Trump did not want to make the $130,000 payment himself and asked Cohen and Weisselberg to find a way to make the payment. The final part of the scheme, prosecutors say Trump arranged to reimburse Cohen for the payoffs that he made on Trump's behalf, saying Cohen submitted 10 similar monthly invoices by email to the Trump Organization for the remaining months in 2017. Each invoice falsely stated that it was being submitted pursuant to the retainer agreement and falsely requested payment for services rendered for a month of 2017. Well, in fact, there was no such retainer agreement, and lawyer A, Cohen, was not being paid for services rendered in any month of 2017. After the twice impeached former president's arraignment, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg addressed reporters about the importance of pursuing the case against Trump.
Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about. 34 false statements made to cover up other crimes. These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are. We cannot and will not normalize serious criminal conduct. We have a distinct and strong, I would say profound, independent interest in New York State. This is the business capital of the world. We regularly do cases involving false business statements.
For Trump, the ultimate indignity is that he got away with the Access Hollywood tape politically, but he will now have to pay for it legally at the hands of Manhattan prosecutors and the people of the state of New York. Joining me now is Hugo Lowell, political investigations reporter for The Guardian, who was in the courtroom today for Trump's arraignment. Katie Phang, attorney and host of The Katie Phang Show on MSNBC. And Charles Coleman Jr., former Brooklyn prosecutor, civil rights attorney, and MSNBC legal analyst. Thank you all for being here. Hugo, I am very excited to hear from you. Please talk about the atmosphere in the court today, what you saw, and specifically what you observed about Donald Trump today.
It was extremely tense. When we got to the courtroom, there was probably about 20 court security officers, probably around 5 to 10 Secret Service officers, and we were waiting for a while. And first, the prosecution team walked in, and then Trump's defense counsel walked in. And then Trump walked in. And when Trump came into the courtroom, he looked particularly angry, visibly shaken, and the most gaunt that I've seen him. And it was really striking. I've never seen him look so, I guess, afraid, and I've never seen him look so serious as he did today. And it was striking how all of this was on his face, even as he showed no discernible emotion throughout proceedings. And I think principally it was the result of him walking into the courtroom, being read the criminal charges, and that actually hitting him. You know, we spoke to advisors when he learned about the indictment, and he was kind of hit then. But when he actually walked into the courtroom, I think he was hit to a whole new degree, and the gravity of the moment really sunk in.
And just to stay with you for a moment, Hugo, I mean, you have covered Donald Trump. You've covered him at Trump Tower. You've covered him at Mar-a-Lago. What you're describing is a very different Donald Trump than the one that, you know, people who watched The Apprentice or watched him as president experienced.
You know, this is a man who is excellent at being performative, about being the star of his own show. And he has been talking for weeks about how he wanted to be the star of his own show this time, too. You know, he was talking about how he wanted to be handcuffed and, you know, with all this bravado about how he wanted his hand specifically behind his back and should I smile for the cameras and, you know, I want to be a martyr. But when it actually came to the moment, he was really drawn. He was really gaunt. And there was none of the performative stuff that you saw kind of in the lead up to this arraignment. Once he made his way into the courtroom where there were no TV cameras and there were only the photographers at the start, that was the tone that he set and that was the demeanor that he had, and I've never seen anything like it.
Let me come to the table for a moment because, you know, back to attorneys here, you know, it's like when they say in boxing, you really don't know anything until you get punched in the face. Mm-hmm. Then you really find out which God you serve, right? You find things out. And I mean, Donald Trump has, for his entire life, had someone fixing things for him. He always had a fixer.
He always wanted a Roy Cohn, right?
He had a Roy Cohn.
Yep.
He had Michael Cohen. He had Alan Weisselberg. He's always had someone to fix it. So even for Donald Trump, who's gotten away arguably with committing a few crimes in his time over the course of his life, suddenly it's different when you're in court.
Think about it this way, Joy. You're talking about someone who went through a Mueller investigation. Nothing happened. You went through an impeachment number 1, nothing happened. You went through impeachment number 2, nothing happened. All of these formal proceedings that have taken place have not led to any actual consequence. But during each of those, you still had the status to be in control of the institutions that were investigating you. You still had a certain level of power over the people who were making the decisions. Now you are not in that arena anymore. You are in an arena where you have no control. You can't control the narrative, you can't control the actors, and you can't control the system. And so those are new things for Donald Trump to experience. And the fact that he is a litigant in myriad civil cases has nothing to do with this, because this is a space where you will lose your freedom.
Yeah.
And that's something that he hasn't experienced before.
Ever before. I mean, there was all the talk of him putting out like a fake version of the mugshot that they could sell on T-shirts. I mean, it gets real when it's a real mugshot.